Hola, can you guys just turn the microphone on so I can hear you, please? Thank you. And who's got the remote today?
The Peninsula schools have been working together probably for the last 7 or 8 years in terms of how it is that we can offer or expand a curriculum across our schools, particularly for schools with small numbers of kids and that don't have the teacher expertise. That was orientated mainly around senior secondary subjects. We had a look at some models over in Victoria that copied our original blended learning model, and they'd expanded it into languages, and so we thought that that certainly would pose an interesting area for us to also have a look at how it is that we might support language delivery across the Peninsula for those schools that don't have the expertise. The benefits are providing a localised or more of a localised program for the students. The students get to interact with the teacher using video conferencing, so there is a level of personalisation with the learning. A lot of the resources are put up online and so are available for the class teacher to use throughout the week and also integrate them into other learning areas. And also the blended learning model includes personalised visits to the school, so the kids actually do get to meet their teacher face to face and build those relationships at that level as well, and we found that to be extremely successful.
The blended learning model uses a range of interactive technologies to deliver Spanish to students, so I use video conferencing, I use YouTube, Smart Notebook, PowerPoint and so on. The lessons are delivered by myself from Streaky Bay to each class in the other sites. The classes also have the supervision of a classroom teacher, and without the introduction of this model, the students would not have otherwise been exposed to the learning of a second language.
The research tells us that if students are learning a language, it helps with their brain development and their thinking skills, their thought processes, and certainly the world that we're now moving into, which is more globalised. Our students aren't going to necessarily work locally when they leave school. There's more often than not they'll be moving off to work either interstate or across other countries. I think it's crucial that they do have an understanding of other languages and how to cope within such an environment. The model works with our local language teacher being released to work with other schools, delivering a language program using video conferencing primarily. They are also able to use other technologies if they need. There have been some issues, and certainly the issues around technology. Bandwidth is always an issue out in the country areas, and making sure that that seamless delivery, that the video conference works well.
We've had some teething problems with technology. If the internet has trouble, then lessons will often drop out. Staff also need to be reasonably confident when using the technology, or at least train up the kids to use the video conferencing unit and the computer.
Yeah, the outcomes have been really positive. It's been fantastic to see how successful the programs run within our school. It's not only heightened the skills or increased the skills of the language teacher, but it's also the whole staff have had a chance to see her involved in that program, how well it's gone, and got them to think about how it is that they might also be involved in something like that down the future. So that's been wonderful within our site. Certainly the other sites that have engaged in the program have talked very positively about the experience and the engagement that their students have shown, and the engagement the class teachers have been able to be involved with as well has been excellent. I think the model has raised the profile of languages. It's got everyone to do some thinking about how it is that they will engage in languages if they haven't been in the past. Certainly finding a language teacher has been very problematic out in the country schools, and that's allowed some country schools to put it in the too hard basket, but now they are starting to have to think about how it is they're going to engage with a language in their school, and looking at potential solutions around that. I think a language program is crucial within your school. Certainly the students are going to benefit greatly from it. It may mean that as a school, as a finance committee, you may have to do some thinking differently about how it is that you allocate your res. Already the allocation for a language program is built into the res, and if it hasn't been used in the past, well, that's been maybe a little luxury that the school has had and enjoyed, but they would need to do some thinking about how it is that they would free up that resource so that a language program could be brought into the school.
So some advice for principals who are thinking of using this model as part of the partnership's way of working. You need to ensure that the school has an ICT person or access to an ICT person to solve simple issues so that lessons do not have to be cancelled, or at least train up a range of staff so that they can help to problem solve. I really think that it's important that schools have a go and see that this method of blended learning does work. Ensure that a platform is also set up for communication between sites as well, such as Edmodo, Wikispace or the Scoodle community. Lessons can also then be uploaded, ready for the staff at the other site to access. I would recommend that they break the lessons into segments, so for example have the revision, explicit teaching, then the students do their work, have a game and review. Also, it's important that you establish good communication with the other staff in the school, as they are a great support and they're instrumental to the successfulness of the program.
Certainly I see it as being a really sustainable model, particularly if the sites are able to allocate a resource to that. I do think it is a way forward in terms of building those relationships across the schools and clusters of schools, and is a great way to support language delivery across the country areas.
And there is plenty of potential for future projects and expansion, such as the linking of Australian schools to overseas schools to ensure that there's real world experiences and opportunities for the students and they can communicate effectively in the target language. Muchas gracias.
I believe that this style of delivery, and although it may be quite an expensive option because principals may need to look at funding a lesson with a teacher like Lisa per class, that in the long run the expense of recruiting an Indonesian or a Spanish teacher to your school may in the end be more cost effective to carry that extra funding that's required, at least for an initial period of time, until the classroom teachers are more competent in the delivery of languages and don't need the intensive support that a Spanish or Indonesian teacher can provide by video conference.